Okay, so what is the Youth Action Lab? So the Youth Action Lab, if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the Youth Action Lab is actually part of a bigger program that is a joint initiative from the African Union and the European Union, hence its name AUEU for African Union, European Union Youth Lab. So the program is part of a broader initiative that aims to empower young people to strengthen young people's involvement in active, meaningful, and innovative ways. And this is done through different things. One of them is financial support, of course. Capacity building, as you'll see, is really emphasized in this program, and opening spaces for youth participation in policy making. And within this broader initiative, this broader program, there are two distinct components. On the one hand, there is the Youth Voices Lab. So the Youth Voices Lab is implemented by Youth Makers Hub, ComDev Africa, Search for Common Ground, Oxfam, and Restless Development. And it provides grants that range from 1,000 to 10,000 euros. And the aim, so it focuses on youth participation, access to information, and policy making. And then we have the Youth Action Lab. So the Youth Action Lab is the program that we will discuss today. And this is implemented by Oxfam, Restless Development, and the European Youth Forum. It gives grants that range from 5,000 to 50,000 euros, and it aims to address the lack of opportunities for young people in Africa and in Europe through grants that support collaboration, innovation, and youth-led solutions. And if we go to the next slide, I'll pass over to my colleague Kuda.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Hi, everyone. My name is Kuda Kwashefoya. I'm part of the Youth Advisory Board, and we'll be looking at the power shifting grants. So what is power shifting? Power shifting, it means we're intentionally moving decision-making power, resources, and leadership roles to young people. So within this frame, we have three main strands, right, that support the power shifting grants. The first one is nothing about youth without youth, hence the coming in of the Youth Advisory Board. So the Youth Advisory Board is central in this project through co-creating some of the significant infrastructure of the project, as well as being central in the selection of the grantees. And then from there, the other strand of the power shifting grants is the capacity development. So we are working not only to give you funds, but also to develop your capacity so that we have resilience, right? And we also develop financial security and organizational capacity. And then from there, we have a simplified application and reporting mechanism that is much more youth-friendly and accommodative to young people. Next slide, please. All right, so now let's look at the four different power shifting grants that we have. So we have the first one here, Innovation Grant. So Innovation Grant ranges from 30,000 euros to 40,000 euros and is targeted towards youth that are designing, testing, scaling, or improving innovations that are tackling global challenges. And the lead consortium partner is Oxfam. And then let's move to Representation Grant. Representation Grant ranges from 5,000 euros to 20,000 euros and are targeted towards a marginalized youth that are raising and amplifying their voices at various levels. And the consortium lead for this grant is Restless Development, Uganda. And then we have the Entrepreneurship Grant, which is 50,000 euros, and it's targeted towards youth that are creating employment and entrepreneurship opportunities, and it's led again by Oxfam. Then last but not least, the reason why we're here, the Cooperation Grant, which is led by the European Youth Forum, and it's 50,000 euros, and it's targeted towards African and European youth that are collaborating on joint advocacy initiatives. Thank you so much. I will pass this to Pauline.
Thank you so much, Kuda. Before we dive into what are cooperation grants, I would like to ask everyone, if you want to add to your image, so to add your name, the name of your organization, and your preferred pronouns if you want to. So you should have three little dots on top of your video, and then you should have the option to rename yourself. And there it would be great if you could write so your name, the name of your organization, and your preferred pronouns if you want to. Thank you. So now let's dive into what are cooperation grants. So cooperation grants have one overall objective, one overall goal, which is to support cooperation initiatives that advocate for young people's rights and priorities at cross-continental and continental levels. So between African and European organizations. And if your application is selected, if you benefit from this grant, you can expect three main things. The first one is financial support to enable your youth organization, your consortium in this case, to advocate for your rights and priorities. So this is done through financial support. This is the €50 grant, €50,000 grant. The second is training and resources. So as mentioned before, there is a very big emphasis on capacity building in the Youth Action Lab. Already in your project proposal, you will have to budget 5% of your own budget to go to capacity building of your own organization. So this is one thing. We also provide several online trainings on the Power to Voices platform, which we will present a bit later on. And we also provide 2 in-person trainings in which, if you are selected, you are expected to participate in. So in this case, for this cycle that started in June 2025 and will last until May 2026, we had a kickoff training that took place in Spain in September in the framework of the University on Youth and Development, which some of you might know. And next week, or in 2 weeks, we are going to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, with all the grantees from the Youth Action Lab for the four grant types to participate in an event which we call Link and Learn event, during which we will hold several workshops, trainings for grantees to link, to learn, to exchange, and to have the tools and resources to implement the projects effectively. And then as a third point, intercultural dialogue and cross-continental collaboration, so new partnerships or existing partnerships between organizations in Africa and in Europe to work together and to do advocacy together. And now a bit more about the modalities of the grant. So as mentioned, there is a first cycle that is ongoing now, and the second cycle will start in May 2026 and will last for 12 months, so until April 2027. The deadline now to apply for this grant is February 15th, and then you can expect until to be contacted in April to know whether your application was selected or not. We will give 10 grants of €50,000 in this cycle. It's €50,000 per consortium. So you will apply as a consortium of 2 to 4 organizations with at least one African and one European organization, and you will have €50,000 to be divided between the consortium. And for this next part on the focus areas of the cooperation grants, I will pass over to my colleague Tolu.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Hi, everyone. My name is Tolu. I'm also a youth advisory board member from Nigeria, and I'm going to just briefly explain the focus areas for the cooperation grants. So as you can see on the screen, there are 4 focus areas. We have policy and advocacy, cross-continental collaboration, marginalized group, and sustainability. So for policy and advocacy, what that means is the consortium that you're forming to apply for the grant, the project has to focus on either a policy influence or implementation initiative, or a policy advocacy or an advocacy initiative. Excuse me. And this can be done to focus on maybe your local community, your country, or a global issue, for example. Please give me a second. Right, thank you very much for your patience. So for policy advocacy, like I mentioned earlier, you can focus on policy implementation either at the national level, local level, or global level as well, aiming to implement societal changes and also involve policymakers in the implementation of the project activities. For the second focus area, cross-continental collaboration, this is a very important aspect of the cooperation grants because we're hoping to build cross-continental collaboration between countries, selected countries in the Africa Union and the European Union as well. So as a major criteria, the consortium has to be made up of at least one country from the African Union and a country from Europe. And for this particular aspect, we are also really keen around the, power dynamics and the colonizing opportunities. So the project can be led by either the organization from Africa, or it can be led by the organization from Europe. So it does not have to be, it's not a fixed criteria on who decides to lead the project, but we also strongly encourage meaningful youth engagement, healthy power dynamics in the project implementation. So you can decide to have certain aspects of the project led by the youth organization from Europe or certain aspects led by the youth organization from Africa. And you can also decide to, synergize where you share different tasks in the project implementation to have representative team members from your consortium, both in Africa and Europe, to ensure that there is meaningful participation and collaboration in the project as well. And then the third focus area for the cooperation grant is marginalized groups. And this is also really important, but also context specific. So we understand that depending on the community you're implementing in, your local context of marginalized groups or marginalized communities might vary. And that's also something we are open to and happy to support. So just properly define the marginalized group and show us how exactly they are marginalized in the context of the project that you're implementing, and also projects that tend to benefit more marginalized groups or initiatives led by marginalized groups and community members are also going to be prioritized in the cooperation grants. And then the last focus area is sustainability. And for us, sustainability means different things. But first, sustainability is about creating a project that has long-term impact. So after after the funding cycle ends, how do you ensure that the project activities continue or the impact from the project is continued and is felt as well? And we're also really happy to see the cross-continental collaboration continue. So whether you plan on getting financing elsewhere or scaling a certain scope of your project together with your collaborative partner after the funding cycle has ended is also something that is really important in the focus area and is of interest to us. So thank you very much, and over to you, Pauline.
Thank you very much, Tolu. So now in terms of who can actually apply to those grants and who those grants are for. So we have a few eligibility criteria. The first one is that your organization has to be a non-profit organization with a clear social mission. So it can operate as a trust, as a community-based organization, as a non-governmental organization, a civil society organization. So the form can also be different depending on the country in which your organization is based. But in any case, the organization has to be a non-profit and it has to have a clear social mission. Your organization also has to be formal. So this means that the organization has to be legally registered in your country, which has to be one of the eligible countries, which we'll go over in a minute. You will need to have an organization bank account and a clear governance structure. Another eligibility criteria is that your organization needs to be in one of the eligible countries for the program. So either one of the 12 African focus countries, which are Ethiopia, Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somalia and Somaliland region, Tanzania, Tunisia, Uganda, Zambia, or Zimbabwe, or in one of the European Union member states. So this is in terms of the location of the organization. And then your organization also needs to, your consortium, sorry, will have 2 to 4 organizations. And one of the partners in the consortium will take the role of coordinating organization, and the others will be collaborators. Everyone will work just as much on the project, but the organization that works as a coordinator will need to have previous experience working on at least one collaborative project. So meaning it will need to have experience working with at least one partner in a project, not necessarily as a coordinator, but to have experience collaborating with another organization. And if you scan the QR code, you can find more information on the website. I will also share the okay. And my colleague Vittoria also shared the website in the chat. So you can also click there. And the eligibility criteria is really outlined both on the website and also in the funding manual. And if we go to the next slide, we'll go into one of the other eligibility criteria on which we received a lot of questions. So your application has to be youth-led in terms of the organizations and in terms of the people who will implement the project. So what does that mean? That means that in your organization, all the people who are in decision-making positions need to be young people, considered 18 to 35 years old in this program. And at least 80% of all the people who are involved in your organization need to be aged 18, 35 years old. For decision-making positions, this really depends from one organization to another. In some organizations, this decision-making power lies within the board. In other organizations, this is not the case, and the board doesn't necessarily have this decision-making power, and this lies more within the staff. So this depends on your organization, and this is something that you will have to explain in your application, and that will also need to be visible in the policies that you have of your organization and in the governance structure of your organization. And for the project itself, the project team needs to be 100% youth aged 18-35. So in practice, this means that all the people you budget for in your application need to be aged 18-35 years old. And the people who will participate in the different in-person activities that we are organizing, so both the kickoff training and the Link and Learn event, will need to be aged 18 to 35 years old. So this was in terms of the eligibility criteria. And as mentioned before, the first cycle already started in June and it's lasting until May 2025. And there are many things that have already been happening. So in this cycle, we are giving 40 grants to 51 organizations in total. So there are 51 organizations that are part of this Youth Action Lab cycle at the moment. And there are many things that are already happening. So there is a platform that you might already know and be registered on, which is called Power to Voices platform. So this is a platform that was developed by Oxfam and that serves as a safe space for people to interact, share project updates, share any kind of training they are attending, they are organizing, any webinars, interact with each other, possibly create new partnerships. And there are social hangouts that are happening. So for all of the grantees from the 4 grant types, so innovation, entrepreneurship, representation, and cooperation, to interact and to have like a social hangout. So an informal space in which the grantees can interact with each other. Outside of the Power to Voices platform, so as mentioned, there is a big emphasis on capacity building in this program. So there are different trainings that are offered on the Power to Voices platform. There is also the 5% of the grantees budget that is being used for different trainings. And we also organized a kickoff training in September at the University on Youth and Development. We have a Link and Learn event, which I talked about, that is coming up in 2 weeks. And we also have monthly monitoring meetings that take place online with all the grantees. So in terms of what's been going on. So on 12th August, it was International Youth Day, and we had both grantees, youth advisory board members, and also consortium partners, so from Oxfam and Restless Development, who attended the International Youth Day in Nairobi, Kenya, participated in panel discussions, in side events, and this was also the chance for the program, for the grantees to interact with each other, get to know each other. Something else that has been going on, so Restless Development, together with the grantees, are conducting a youth-led research to understand what is working and what could be improved in the program. So this is really led by the organizations that are receiving the grants themselves. And there was a training that happened in Entebbe, Uganda, beginning of September with the youth researchers and Restless Development. And as mentioned, there was the University on Youth and Development that took place in Molina, Spain. And we, as part of the University on Youth and Development, which had 250 participants, we organized a kickoff training for the cooperation grantees. So for a week, grantees had trainings on advocacy, project management, financial management, communication strategy. It was also the chance for the consortiums to meet each other, to exchange, and to get the tools and the resources that are necessary to implement the project. There are many other things that have also been going on, but this was to give an idea. And now, so how to get started? So how to find a partner? If you already know someone, if you already know another organization you want to partner up with, this is fine. You can contact them and you can start working on your application. We don't see the... and you can already start working on your application together. You can go through the documents, see what you would like to work on, and you start working on your application, keeping in mind that you always need to be at least one African and one European organization. If you do not know an organization, we are facilitating this process. So we created a matchmaking form for which you can find the QR code on screen. And my colleague Vittoria also shared the link in the chat. And in this matchmaking form, you can fill out the name of your organization, what role you would like to take in the consortium. So whether you want to be coordinator or collaborator, what you would like to work on. And so what you would like to work on. So it's also important that you have an idea of what you would like to work on before you fill out the database. And then everyone who registered to the database will be contacted, and we will hold a matchmaking workshop on the 8th of January. So with different breakout rooms for organizations to meet each other, not in person in this case, of course, because it will be online, but like be able to see each other in an online setting, in an online session. Now, to navigate the database, so once you fill out the matchmaking form, you will see a confirmation message that will tell you how to navigate the database, but it can sometimes be a bit tricky. So the database is basically an Excel file. The first thing to do is, once you enter the database, to click on data. Once you click on data, you will see different words, like different sections. You will see create filter view. This is what you have to click on. Once you create a filter view, you will see a filter on the Excel file, and then you will be able to filter out the organizations that are interesting for you and the ones that are not interesting for you. So on image number 3, you see that the filter option looks like little stripes. You need to click on it. And if, for example, your organization is based in one of the 12 African countries, then you will need to unclick Europe. So you will need to click on Europe. You click on OK, and then you will only see the organizations that are in Africa. So that was if your organization was based in Europe. But so it's, yes, so and vice versa. And then you can do the same. So we also put a list of topics. And we can stay in the other. Okay. We also put a list of topics, which is not exhaustive because, as you might know, you can work on any topic you want to work on as long as it's relevant for all organizations that are part of the consortium. We put a list of topics to help you filter out the different the different information that you can find in the database. But the list is not exhaustive, and there is also another option. So, and now I will let my colleague Tolu tell you more about other ways you can find a partner. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pauline. So I'm going to share two other ways that you can find a partner organization to collaborate with your application, whether you're applying from Europe or you're applying from Africa. So the first one is by making a social media post, and I recommend making one either on LinkedIn or signing up on the Part Voices platform and making one in the AU Youth Action Lab group. And here you have a sample message on the screen just talking about what you do, the thematic area that your organization is focused on, and how you are willing to collaborate with other organizations to form a consortium to apply for the funding. Also, another way you can find a partner organization is by sending a cold email. So you could send either an email on LinkedIn or a code, cold email is basically a code message to someone. So you could also do that on the Part of Voices platform if you found an organization that you want to collaborate with, or an actual email. So if there's an organization in Europe or in Africa that you think their thematic area aligns with what you want to do in applying for the corporation grant, then you can reach out and maybe have a meeting and speak about it. Thank you. Over to you, Pauline.
Thank you, Tolu. For the timeline and next steps, I'll pass over to Kuda.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Next slide, please. All right, so these are some of the important dates that are supposed to take note of. So the first one is the 8th of January, which is our Find Your Partner workshop. And then we have the 26th and the 28th of January, which is Write an Application Online session. And then, of course, the 15th of February, which is the deadline. And then the grant cycle starts from May 2026 and ends in April 2027. So please do take note of these dates. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what are the next steps? So the first one is go through the website, the frequently asked questions and the funding manuals carefully to look at some of the things that we've covered within this webinar so that you can properly situate your solution within the eligibility and some of the requirements of the program. 2, register to the Power to Voices platform. I think the link has been put in the chat. Is that so? No, all right. But register to the Power to Voices platform, and then of course follow the AUE Youth Lab community. And then the third next step is find at least one partner organization through our database and matchmaking workshop. And then 4, decide on a project topic together and have a look at the questions. And then 5th, next step is work on your project proposal so that you come to the next webinar with specific questions. Thank you so much. The link for the Power to Voices platform is in the chat, so please feel free to utilize it to register to the platform. I'll leave this time to Pauline.
Thank you very much, Kuda. So we've come to the end of the presentation. Now we will have time for a Q&A, and I will stop the recording.